உங்கள் பிள்ளைகள் 6 முதல் 12ஆம் வகுப்பு வரை சிபிஎஸ்இ ஸ்டேட் போர்டில் படிக்கிறார்களா? அவர்களை அதிக மதிப்பெண் வாங்க வைக்க ஈசி வழி சாணக்யா இன்டர்நேஷனல் அகாடமி கோச்சிங் சென்டர் ஃபார் ஆல் சப்ஜெக்ட்ஸ் 7823910123 ciacademy21@gmail.com.
Because I owe a lot of my upbringing to Swami Chinmayanand in Delhi. When I was a teenager, my brother and I used to go every summer to attend Swamiji's Gita classes. And my parents used to take us there. So I remember the BMI charts and the whole teaching. That was my formative, introduction as a child to the Vedanta. So I'm always very fond of Chinmaya Mission. Anywhere in the world, when I'm invited, I feel at home. So thank you, Swamiji, for this. I'm especially honored that my dear friend Guru Murthy ji is here because we've gone back many years. He's been a great friend and ally, and we've had many interesting discussions. He launched the Breaking India book 11 years ago. We did it in Chennai. We also did it in the Vivekanand Foundation in Delhi. And his comments were very important, and they've turned out to be true. The book actually shaped the whole discourse for the last decade. A whole lot of people are taking that idea, taking that framework forward with their own examples and their own research. We are convinced that this new book will do the same for this decade because it uncovers issues that are very different from what the first book covered. The first book covered basically threats that are foreign threats along with Indian collaborators, but targeting the poor people, the less educated people, the village people, the rural people through NGOs. And now it is a different kind of a game, targeting educated elite people from good families in private universities, in industry, in technology, in startups, people in government, people in Niti Aayog. It's sort of like the top-down rather than the bottom-up. And therefore, since it is top-down, the most prestigious institution in the world, with the biggest brand is Harvard, because that is something that everybody wants to be part of, that whole Harvard phenomenon. So it is not a small NGO or some church group here or something like that, like we've had in the past. Those things also go on, but this is a new thing of a much bigger scale. Now, to start with, I want to tell you not to be scared of the big size of the book. You don't need to read the whole book for the following reason. If you read the introduction, that gives you a very complete thesis of the whole book. That's one thing you should read. And then every chapter has a one-page overview, like an executive summary. So if you read those, you have read the whole book in about 60, 70, 80 pages, something like that. You've read the whole book. And in terms of what's the thesis, what are the main points being made, which are quite a lot. And then you can dive into any chapter separately if you want. Whichever chapter you want, you don't have to read in sequence, you just dive in. So for example, there is a chapter on how IITs are being attacked. IITs are being attacked as centers of casteism and Brahmin privilege being transmitted from generation to generation. And now there is a call for caste census in Silicon Valley because and lawsuits saying that somebody was prejudiced against on accounts of caste. And there's a whole discourse that Indian tech workers have brought caste into America. And so this should be controlled by having quotas on H-1B visas and censuses of corporate people in the corporate America. And once that happens, then they'll start doing census of Microsoft India and Google India and all the automobile companies in India, which are Western. So the subsidiaries in India and suppliers in India will also be required to do that. So this is going to be an issue. So this is a separate chapter if you want to read what is happening, at least you'll be informed about it and our analysis of it. If you want to read about China's infiltration into the United States through these universities, that's a separate chapter. So like this, there are different things that we are talking about. Now, what holds all this together is the main contribution. Many of these things are discussed as one particular thing here, like some Washington Post writes an article supporting the farmer protest, and New York Times writes an article criticizing the government regarding Article 370 matter, and so on and so forth. Whenever these things happen, then Jay Shankar has to go and give a rebuttal, and a lot of people get upset. But you know, if you keep fighting one fire at a time, it just won't work, because the fires are coming at a faster and faster rate. These things are happening in Canada, in UK, against our tradition, in USA, and also here in India. So what you need to do is go to the source, as Swamiji said. You need to go to the source. If you are being bitten by snakes and they have poison, then you need to find out who is breeding these sources, these snakes. Where are the snakes being born? Where is the nest of snakes? And what is the poison? Poison being ideology, negative discourse, which is being spread by these snakes. So what is that negative discourse? Who is creating it and spreading these snakes? Why are they doing it? What's their game plan? That is what this book is doing, not giving separate examples here and there. We're giving a lot of examples, but really what we're uncovering is the source of all these things. So to understand it, there is a theory I want to spend a little bit of time. The theory, we all know that Marxism in United States are sort of opposite, because America is a capitalist place and Marxism is different. But what would surprise you is that there is an Americanized version of Marxism which is out, which has been out for a while, but now it's gained a lot of momentum, and this is called critical race theory. And what's Marxist about it is that it sees the world as consisting of oppressors and oppressed, which means people who are victims, and then the rest of the society are making them victims, they're oppressing them. It used to be during Marxist time, economically underprivileged classes, and the people who were the landowners or people who owned the factories, they were the oppressors. But now it has become race. So it is whites are oppressors, blacks are oppressed. And then minority religion is part of the victim. And then LGBTQ is part of the victim. And so on and so forth. So therefore, the new Marxism in America is a kind of a coalition of all those who feel they have grievances against society. And these grievances-oriented people, a nation of victims almost, is now being asked to fight the rest of society. So Marxism looks for a revolution. It does not look for accommodation. It does not say we can adjust and reform. It says you have to overthrow. You have to destroy. The thesis, which is the discourse that is running society, should be fought with an antithesis. And this antithesis will destroy the thesis, and neither of them will survive. Then there'll be a new emerging thesis coming out of it. Now that's essentially what Marxism is. But Marxism has never succeeded in creating a new system. It's succeeded in destroying, but has no experience in creating a new society successfully. There have been many Marxist revolutions successful in destroying what existed, but not successful in replacing it with something better. So that's a problem, an issue. And now United States has become the center of this Americanized Marxism, and this is tearing the nation apart. So you might wonder, okay, so if this is happening in America, why should we bother? So that's the second part. The Indianization of critical race theory is a very big thing that's happened. This Indianized critical race theory is being developed in Harvard. And we give you many examples. We name the names of prominent scholars. And this is basically bringing the idea that the Dalits are the blacks of India. The Dalits are blacks of India in the American sense, and the non-Dalits are the whites of India. And this whole difference between the two and the tension between the two is actually racism in the American sense. Now, Yes, of course, there is oppression of people here. We don't deny that. But the history is not the same as history of race in America. In America, you had the blacks were brought from another continent. The equivalent thing would be if Dalits were brought from somewhere else into India and made slaves, which is not the case. Also, in America, the whites are the vast majority, and the blacks have been a small minority. And here it is not that the Brahmins are a big majority; they are a small percentage, and the vast majority are the lower caste people. So the oppression is not of the same quality. And the minority issue is not equivalent to blacks and whites in America. The minority issue would be, Muslims came as foreign invaders. They did. People acknowledge that. So did the Christians. So the equivalent thing would be if the blacks had come as foreign invaders. The blacks who are now considered oppressed, if they had come as foreign invaders and ruled over the whites, and now they are saying that we are oppressed, then it would be something similar. But it is not the same history. So if the history is not the same, the facts are not the same, you cannot just blindly apply the American template onto India. And we are not concerned, we are not debating and arguing and denying that there is oppression, there is injustice, needs to be solved, but it needs to be solved by Indians within India on Indian terms. It does not need to be solved on American terms, and it certainly is not something that Harvard will provide a solution. So that is the issue here. Now, what starts at Harvard doesn't stay at Harvard. The Harvard Kennedy School is very powerful. They train all the think tanks around the world, including American think tanks, including Carnegie and Ford Foundation and Brookings in India. Big think tanks in India are sponsored from there. The ideology is influencing the US government, the Congress, the Senate, the State Department. So when you see the US State Department saying that India lacks human rights and India responds, or India lacks democracy, India's democracy is not even valid now, and India is becoming a fascist country. The point is, while Indians are reacting, they don't know where it's coming from. They don't know what is the theory behind it. Why are they doing it? I mean, they're not stupid people. They have a very well thought out plan, well thought out argument, and we need to understand what is their argument so we can deal with it. We can sit down and give a counter argument. And they are reasonable people if we know how to argue back. So this book explains where all these things coming from. What is the theoretical basis on which these things are being formulated and exported to India, so that when we see something like that, rather than just reacting, we can also understand why they are saying this, who's behind it, what's their agenda, who's funding it, all of that. So this is in a nutshell what this book is trying to do. Now, once you understand this Americanized Marxism and then the Indianized critical race theory, then you have an idea of the framework in which this new battle of discourse is going on, and it is a pretty serious battle of discourse. Then the next thing to understand is that this discourse is being brought to India. It is the foundation of the liberal arts in India. Ashoka University in the north, Kriya University in the south. Azim Premji has various projects that bring this in. Tata Institute of Social Sciences, and so on and so forth. A lot of prestigious universities in India and think tanks in India basically are promoting this kind of liberal arts. So when the national education policy says, let's bring liberal arts and put them all over the country, including IIMs and IITs, we don't have a Swadeshi or Indian traditional idea of liberal arts that has been developed enough for the academic world. We do have the Shastras, we do have the source material, but it has not been turned into university level curriculums. So by default, when we want to introduce liberal arts, whose liberal arts are we bringing? We're bringing Harvard's liberal arts. We're bringing professors who are trained there. So the entire social sciences industry in India is trained either directly from such places, or they've been trained by those who come from there, so indirectly. The ideological framework of liberal arts, social sciences, humanities is largely a kind of a US-based project that has been exported. And India, they want to export this everywhere. It's not just India particularly, everywhere. But India is the biggest market because we have English-speaking people, we have very bright people, large number of Harvard faculty and research scholars in the liberal arts are Indian people who've been hired there. Like we have outsourced tech workers, we've also outsourced a lot of these kind of people who are into humanity, into the human rights and social justice kind of projects. So Indian workers are taken there, nurtured, developed. They do a lot of this work, and then they come back and they also bring all these theories back. And there is a whole ecosystem in India through which they bring it back. And now it's not just the academics and it's not just the media, it's also industry. And Vijaya will talk to you about how the industry is bringing some of these things, what are popularly called wokeism. They're bringing all this into Indian industry, which is going to have a lot of consequences within India. And then there is a lot of this coming in through government. Some of these people are brought in as advisors in India. Some of them are advisors in Niti Aayog and in other departments. These folks and some of the consulting companies, American consulting companies, are developing policy for India. They're developing policy on everything. You see, philanthropy, which is for services, is one thing, providing food, clothing, education, services, basic services. That's good. But this is a new kind of philanthropy which is making policy, which is really the job of government. So this is policy from Harvard through Kennedy School and Business School and the Harvard, all kind of different departments and schools being exported to India. And then in India, it is being taken in by industry, it's being taken in by think tanks, it's being taken in by government, and a whole lot of American consultants are involved in coaching how India should take over American policies. So this is top down. This is not going to the villages and trying to convert them or do something at their bottom up level. This is top down. Breaking India 1.0 was bottom up. And Breaking India 2.0 is top-down policy making and re-educating people through these kind of programs. And we feel that it is far more dangerous, far bigger scale of activity. Many people complain that there are people like George Soros who are mischief makers. But we are pointing out that George Soros is in his 80s, he's fine, he is all that. But now there are young people, and we featured one of them who is half the age of Soros, with 5 times as much money, worth $20-25 billion, who's targeted India, who's been here for a decade, who's got 100-200 ventures, startups, and his goal is to socially re-engineer the bottom 500 million people of India, very openly. He calls it the other half, the lower half billion people, of India. And this is being done through a lot of digitization, artificial intelligence, machine learning, capturing data, providing them with services that really a government should provide, capturing ideas, knowledge about their financials, their religion, their conflict, who will conflict with whom, ideology, keeping track of all the politicians, all the election results, federal, central, state, from the partition, from the independence till today, whole database, figuring out predictive models of behavior, changing this behavior, figuring out how you can be influenced to buy certain things through social media, how you can be influenced to vote a certain way, how you can be influenced to go fight another person, ideologically influenced. All of this is going on. So this is using technology, using big brands at the top level of legitimacy in India, and coming through the prestigious systems, prestigious institutions. So rich people from good families are sending their kids to these universities, paying 10-20 lakhs a year. And this is part of the education that these kids are receiving. So maybe the parents are of a certain kind, and they are very established as Indians and have love for nation and all that. But maybe unknown to them, their kids are getting this brainwashing. Either they're going overseas and bringing it back, or this is coming to India and they're being taught in India about all these things. So this is what we are discussing in this book. And another surprise we are bringing out is the role of Indian billionaires in funding all this. There is a Mahindra Humanities Center at Harvard, the director of which is a very well-known, internationally renowned postmodernist, and he has been deconstructing the concept of India as a nation. He deconstructs whether India is a legitimate nation, deconstruct the tradition, Hindu traditions of India, and keeps putting into doubt in his interviews and in his press conferences very openly, against the current system that is going on. But not just now. Even the previous Indian government, they were against all of that. So it is not just Modi specific, although it's become more enhanced. But even before Modi, when there was a previous government, they were against all the basic civilizational structures of India. There is a Lakshmi Mittal and Family South Asia Institute. So the name of a prestigious family, and $50 million were given to set it up, and then more money later on, where they are having these kind of conferences all the time, where they are bringing these people from the JNU type and the Ashoka type and the ultra-left type to spin this narrative and question this Kashmir issue and legitimize, various riots and revolts and all that, give a voice to the people who are rebelling against India in various ways, and make it look like it's proper and legitimate and very important for Harvard to be supporting such people. And then there is the Piramal Institute, which is a Piramal Center for Public Health. Now you will say, well, okay, public health is very good. We should be getting help from Harvard. I would like it if they were setting up a public health, if Indians were setting up a public health center in Harvard to bring medicines or to bring treatments, maybe cures. Maybe get Harvard to lobby that the Indian vaccine was good. It should have been allowed elsewhere. But the WHO was not willing to allow the Indian vaccine for Harvard. Maybe they should get Harvard to understand and appreciate the accomplishments of the Indian government in the vaccine project, which is the largest vaccine project in the world. But none of those things happened. None of those things were done in Harvard that should have been done. If we are giving them money in public health, then we should lobby what we want for it. Instead, what was done were a lot of papers on did the minorities get proper treatment? Were they ill-treated? That sort of a thing during COVID. So now I want to tell you that China has a different status in Harvard, because China has negotiated what they want and they're getting what they want. So China also gives donations, and China also sets up chairs. But Chinese philanthropists are aligned with the Chinese government. They're very nationalistic. You will never find a China-sponsored event at Harvard or a school at Harvard which is talking about the Tibetan freedom movement. They're not allowed. Or the Uyghur problem. They're not allowed. Or the Hong Kong, democracy, not allowed, or the Taiwan issue, not allowed, or their invasion of Indian land, not allowed. So Harvard is controlled because those guys say these are things you can't talk about. If you want to talk about social justice in China, human rights in China, no way. So Harvard complies because those guys have a strong way of presenting it. Yet, as far as India is concerned, discussing all the problems of Kashmir and all these different places of movement, separatist here, there is very common and very popular. So you can't say that what Harvard is doing to us is normal and natural, because in the case of China, it's not. In fact, we have a whole lot of comparison between how China is treated and how India is treated at Harvard. So I would say I'm not accusing the Indian billionaires of anything wrong. They have done nothing wrong because it's their money. They can give their money to do whatever they like. And if they want to support a certain ideology, they have every right to do that. It's a free country. They have a right. It could also be that they don't know that they've written all this money and it is for prestige and they make them very famous and they make a lot of friends. It's good networking, but they really don't know about what is being done. However, if you have given your name and something is being done under your name, and when the person is speaking all this stuff, behind is a banner with your family name, you have to know. You have to know. And if you don't know, then you ought to do something. So this book is in some ways an audit. It's like an auditor gives the industrialist a report and says this is what may be an issue, this may be the financial problem, this may be a problem in your factory, and now you have to decide what you want to do with it. If they want to do nothing, that's their problem, that's their prerogative. Similarly, we are doing what you can call a civilizational narrative audit for the Indian billionaires, to tell them in your name and with your money, certain things are being done and you should know about it. And if they want to say, okay, we accept what they are doing is good, fine, that's their choice. If they say, thank you for telling me, but we don't want to argue because we love Harvard blindly, that's their choice. Or they might say, hey, listen, thank you for telling us, we will now take it up. Maybe we will call those guys. We don't want our name to be used this way. We are patriotic people and we don't want this kind of a second-class treatment compared to China. We want to see how China is treated. We should be treated the same way. And as far as social justice is concerned, we have enough resources within India. We have a legal system. We have a democracy. We have courts. We have all kinds of discussions. We are able to solve our problems. We do have problems, but so does America. I mean, United States wouldn't like if Russians put up some kind of heavy think tanks to try and mess with America. When the Russians tried to meddle with the American elections, it was a very big problem for the United States. And United States would not like if China starts meddling with this. So, and when the Arabs put up some Islamic chairs in various places and try to influence, there was a backlash. They're saying, hey, we don't want all this. So they are protecting their national integrity from foreign interference. China protects its national integrity. France is concerned about these things. Most important countries have self-respect, and they don't want somebody else to come and solve our problems. So India has to wake up to this reality, and the question we ask is India for sale? Thank you very much.